Assalamu alaikum student. This is Dr. Sabina Qasim, your research methods and skill course facilitator. Today, the topic that I'm going to discuss is measurements of variable. Chapter objectives are: explain when operationalization of variable is necessary, operationally define variables, what an operational definition is not. Measurement of variables in the theoretical framework is an integral part of research and an important aspect of research design. Unless the variables are measured in some way, we will not be able to test our hypotheses and find answers to complex research issues. Measurement. What is measurement? Measurement is actually the assignment of numbers or other symbols to characteristic or attributes of object according to a pre-specified set of rules. Objects include persons, strategic business units, companies, countries, kitchen appliances, restaurants, shampoo, yogurt, and so on. Example of characteristics of objects are arousal-seeking tendency, achievement motivation, organizational effectiveness, shopping, enjoyment, length, weight, ethnic diversity, service quality, conditioning effects, and taste. There are basically two types of variables: objective nature and subjective nature. Objective nature's variables could be measured. However, subjective nature variables are hard to be measured. Objects that can be measured easily or physically are the length and width of an office table. You can easily measure the length and width of an office table, the office floor area, the demographic characteristic of the employees, such as how long have you been working in this organization? What is your job title? What is your marital status? The number of children? The absenteeism of employees? The number of products produced? The number of products rejected during the course of each month? All these are objective in nature. These variables are objective in nature. That is, you can measure these variables. Objects that can't be physically measured include perception of individuals, extent of authority given to the individual, how the supervisor treats the workers, promotional opportunities, degree of understanding. Now you see, just imagine, can you physically measure these objects? You can't measure them. They are not in numbers. It's really hard to measure. For this, there is one technique to measure these variables. That is to reduce the abstract notion to observable behavior and characteristics. For instance, the concept of thirst is abstract. That is, we cannot see thirst. We expect a thirsty person to drink water. We can determine the thirst level by the measure of quantity of what that person drinks. How many glasses of water that person drinks? If he's thirsty, he might drink 3 glasses. If he's very thirsty, he may drink maybe more than 3 glasses. Well, 1 glass of water can easily quench the thirst. But if the person is very, very thirsty, then he may increase the level of glasses. So this is what we can say, that there is a technique that reduces the abstract notion of observable behavior and characteristics. Now, what is that? How we are going to do that? We'll discuss now. First, try to understand what is operational definition. How we operationalize the variable. What is operationally defining a concept? We'll learn things step by step, okay? Now first, what is the operational definition? Operational definition of a variable is the statement of the specific dimensions and elements through which a concept will become measurable. Operationalizing is done by looking at the behavioral dimensions or properties denoted by the concept. These are then translated into observable and measurable elements. Operationally defining a concept involves a series of steps. An example will help to illustrate how this is done. See the example? Example is operationalizing the concept of achievement motivation. Concept here is achievement motivation. Now we want to operationalize this concept of achievement motivation. Now please pay attention. This is very important thing to understand. What behavioral dimensions or characteristics would we expect to find in with high achievement motivation? Now, the question is, the concept is achievement motivation. Now, what possible behavioral dimensions or characteristics would we expect to find in people? Definitely, you will find this correct characteristics or dimensions in people with high motivation, achievement motivation characteristics. The people who have high achievement motivation would have the following 5 typical broad characteristics, which we call dimensions. Right? The people who have high achievement motivation have following characteristics. In other terms, we call that dimensions, right? What are those? Number one, people who have high motivation, they would be driven by work, right? Number two, no mood to relax, prefer to work on their own rather with others. They engage in challenging jobs rather than easy ones. They like to get feedback from the supervisor, colleagues, to know how they are progressing. Now, these are the characteristics or the dimensions of high motivation or high motivated people, right? That is, we have first break down the concept of achievement motivation into 5 different characteristics or 5 different dimensions, right? Although breaking the concept of achievement motivation into above 5 dimensions has reduced its level of abstraction. You see, the concept of achievement motivation by breaking down into different 5 dimensions has reduced its level of abstraction. But still, it does not fully operationalize the concept into measurable elements of behavior. For this, you can further break down each dimension into its elements in order to distinguish those who have high motivation from those with less. Elements of dimension 1. They would be driven by work. This is dimension 1. Now you are going to break down these dimensions into further 5 elements. Be at work all the time, be reluctant to take time off from work, persevere even in the face of some setbacks. All the above elements could be counted by asking a direct questions to the respondent through a questionnaire or an interview. That means these dimensions which you have break down into further elements, we call this either elements or the item or the questions in your questionnaire which you ask from the respondent. After asking this thing, this will clearly explain the concept of achievement motivation. This was the first dimension of achievement motivation, which is further breakdown into further 3 elements. Dimension number 2, no mood to relax. What possible elements could be? This is the degree of unwillingness to relax can be measured by asking people such questions as, how often do you think about work while you are away from workplace? What are your hobbies? How do you spend your time when you are away from workplace? Now, these three questions, these three items, these three elements are addressing this dimension, no mood to relax. Similarly, dimension 3, which asks, prefer to work on their own rather with others. This is the third dimension of high achievement motivation people. Individuals with high achievement motivation have no patience with ineffective people and does not like to work with others. Dimension 4, they engage in challenging jobs rather than easy ones. They don't like routine jobs. They like to take moderate rather than overwhelming challenges. Fifth dimension, they like to get feedback from their superiors, colleagues to know how they are progressing. Ask for feedback on how the job has been done, both negative or both positive. Now, if you see the figure, it's very easy to understand now. This is the concept. Achievement motivation is the concept which you are going to, which is an abstract notion. You cannot measure it like this. If you want to know the achievement motivation of any person, you cannot measure it as what you have been measuring it with the variables which were objective in nature. That was very easy to measure because they were physically, it could be physically be measured. However, this is subjective in nature. You cannot measure it. So for that, you are operationalizing its definition and breaking this concept into 5 different dimensions. You see, dimension 1 was driven by work, dimension 2, unable to relax, impatient with ineffectiveness, and so on. But still, these 5 dimensions was still having abstract notion in them. They were not fully operationalized. In order to fully operationalize this concept, these dimensions were also break down into further more elements. Constantly working, persevering despite setback, very reluctant to take time off for anything. These string things are addressing this dimension. These 2 elements are addressing this dimension, and so on. Once it is clearly operationalized, then only this concept is clear. This concept of high achievement motivation can be measured by asking questions, these questions from the respondent, which you find in your questionnaire, which you are going to give to the respondent. Clear? Now, what an operational definition is not. Okay, this we are going to discuss in our next lecture. Okay, thank you so much. If you have any question, you can ask me, right? Through email.